Up next, we have Avila Hansen, a senior research advisor at Education Northwest, who also serves as a research lead for the REL Northwest. She helps conduct studies on several facets of English learners in education and co-authored both reports presented in today's event. Havila will be presenting to us today on the next report, Advanced Course Enrollment and Performance of in Washington.
Richard writing, please come to the office.
I'm sorry, I'm getting some background sound. Okay. Following Havila's presentation, we will be joined by Elizabeth Gongora, who serves as a bilingual ESL coordinator at a Sharyland Independent School District in Texas. Elizabeth provides professional development and guidance to administrators and teachers on compliance issues and English learner students. She has extensive experience working in districts with high percentages of English learners and has held a variety of public school positions. Elizabeth will serve as a practitioner reflecting on the report presented by Havila. Havila, you can begin. And again, as a reminder, if you have questions, go ahead and type them into the chat box.
Thank you very much, Dali. It's a pleasure to speak with all of you today. A large body of work shows that a solid academic foundation is needed for success in post-secondary education and careers. Like many places in the United States, Washington's population of students from diverse language backgrounds is growing rapidly. As a rough measure, the number of current English learners in the state has doubled over the past 10 years and now represents about 10% of the student population. The future of Washington's economy depends increasingly on their success in the workforce in a state that has one of the largest skills mismatches between available jobs and qualified candidates, especially in the STEM fields. English learners and emergent bilingual students may face additional barriers to enrolling and performing well in advanced courses. They may have to learn English and course content at the same time. They may have interrupted education due to higher mobility rates, making it difficult to transfer credits earned in the U.S. and abroad. Further, there may be tracking policies that limit access to advanced content before students are fully proficient in English, and these may restrict opportunities to meet prerequisites. Given these challenges, Washington educators and education leaders were interested in finding out how students from different language backgrounds were accessing advanced courses. So we set out to describe patterns for students among their peers in the same school and across schools in the state of Washington. For this study, we thought about advanced courses in two ways. There are horizontal advanced courses, those that could replace a regularly required course, such as honors biology instead of regular biology. And then there are vertical advanced courses. Those are the ones that a student can only take after meeting prerequisites. For example, to take pre-calculus, students often have to pass Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. We also included AP, IB, and dual enrollment and dual credit courses that offer college credit for high school students. We also thought carefully about the groups of students we wanted to focus our attention on. When looking at the academic journeys and outcomes of students with diverse language backgrounds, it's important to remember that they are not a monolithic group. There are many ways we could group students to reflect their heterogeneity. For this study, we decided to look at groups of students based on the language they spoke and their English learner status. Among English learners, we have those who are currently classified as English learners and those who have been reclassified in the prior school year, or former English learners. The home language for more than half of these students was Spanish. Because this was a short report, we focused on how Spanish-speaking students compare to students who speak other languages and to students who speak only English. Then we have students who have never been English learners. Some of these students had a primary or home language that was not English. We call these students bilingual, even though we recognize that there could be a wide range of proficiency among these students in their home or primary languages. Again, more than half of these students spoke Spanish. After grouping students by language and English learner status, we were able to compare some outcomes for the different groups. Most of our analyses identified gaps in access and performance in advanced courses for Spanish speakers in particular. Fewer enrolled in advanced courses, and those that did took fewer of them and earned just slightly lower grades. In addition, schools that serve few Spanish speakers offered more advanced courses than those that serve many. However, differences between groups of students disappeared when we compared students within those groups who had similar academic preparation. On the other hand, differences across schools persisted even after taking into account many school-level characteristics that might be able to explain the gaps. Let's take a look at some of the specific results. Here we show the average number of advanced courses students from each group take in a given school year. You can see that Spanish speakers, regardless of their English learner status, take fewer advanced courses than their peers who speak other language, and fewer than students who speak only English. At the same time, it is notable that bilingual students who speak languages other than Spanish take more advanced courses per year than English-only speakers. However, when we compare students who have equal prior academic preparation as measured by their GPA and state test scores in the prior school year, gaps all but disappear for Spanish speakers, putting them on equal footing with English-only speakers. In other words, when students are equally prepared for advanced coursework, they enroll in about the same number of advanced courses. Another way to examine access to advanced courses is by finding out how many and which ones are offered in the schools that students attend. When we divided schools into 4 quartiles based on the percentage of students who spoke Spanish in the school, we found that the schools that serve next to no Spanish speakers offer about 9 advanced courses for every 100 students, compared to about 6 advanced courses for schools that serve many Spanish speakers. These results take into account many factors that might explain differences among schools, such as their size, demographic and socioeconomic composition, average math and reading test scores, and their urbanicity. Still, these results hold. So something else must be driving this difference, and we need to investigate further to find out what that might be. There are a few things that we can take away from the results that we might be able to use to improve opportunities for access to and success in advanced courses for English learners and Spanish speakers. If efforts to prepare students, especially Spanish speakers, for advanced coursework in earlier grades are successful, we'd expect to see an increase in their enrollment in advanced courses in high school. One way to improve access could be to offer language assistance in advanced courses. Supports could range anywhere from offering some professional development to teachers of advanced courses to having a bilingual co-teacher or aide in the class to offering sections of more rigorous courses in Spanish or another commonly spoken language in the school. One important area to explore is Algebra 1 in middle school. In a related study, we showed that passing Algebra 1 in middle school made a critical difference in students' access to upper-level math courses in high school. Finally, figuring out how to offer equitable opportunities to take advanced courses within and across schools could be beneficial. Promising practices could be identified by interviewing educators and administrators of schools that have done well in providing advanced courses opportunities for students who speak another language. In addition, finding out what types of advanced courses schools offer could shed light on how to improve access. Diversifying options to include some courses that do not depend as heavily on academic English, like fine and performing arts, world languages, and international baccalaureate courses, could help since these courses tend to have lower participation gaps than advanced ELA, math, and social studies courses. And again, if you'd like to find out more about the study, the full report is online at the IES webpage, and feel free to reach out to me too.
Hi, good afternoon, and my name is Elizabeth Golgota, and I am at Sherryland ISD in Mission, Texas. We're along the south border of Texas with Mexico, just a few minutes away, and we have approximately 10,000 students in our district, with about 28% of them being ELs. And so for today, what I'm going to be doing is talking about my role in terms of the second study on advanced courses in secondary schools. And so the scope of my work is typically done with district administrators and campus administrators, as well as ESL strategists, counselors, teachers of ELs, and parents. And so my primary focus is going to be with ESL strategists as we work to look at student support services that we can provide. And after reading through this study, what we found is that we do have some similarities with the findings of the study. And so what we looked at was, what are some of the things that we are currently working on as part of our support to ELs, as well as what are some things that we need to now take into consideration. And then that is what I would call our homework, or what is the work that we still have to do as a result of the findings of the study. So our Spanish speakers here in our district, just like in the study, they also seem to take fewer advanced courses than do students of other languages. And if you notice throughout my slides, there are these small page numbers, and that's just to facilitate your reference back to the study, just so that you can see where we made those connections. Also, in agreement with what was presented a few minutes ago, is that sometimes it's not that our students are not interested in those advanced courses, but we recognize the need for English language development in order to truly access and participate within the courses. One of the other challenges we have is that we do have students coming in for the first time in 9th grade, so we have to help them get ready to meet that state requirement for graduation. So in our state of Texas, our students are required to pass 5 state exams for graduation purposes. And the greatest challenge we have is that both these state tests as well as the AP exams, those are only offered in English. So those are some instances where the development of language takes precedence, so it may take up some of their time in their daily schedule, so that doesn't allow for them to be able to have time to enroll in the advanced courses. Currently, what we are working on is, in order to help our students have that higher grade point average and the higher scores in their standardized tests, is that we are working with our students in the earlier grades. So one of the things that we work on is that need to identify the gaps early on. So in our district, we have Eduphoria Aware, and we run all of our local assessments, our benchmarks, and our state assessment data through this system. So it helps us identify quickly the true gaps of the knowledge of our students. So we also are able to pinpoint what are the areas that they're most struggling with in terms of content knowledge. And then we also run our Texas language proficiency test, which is STEMPAS, and we also run that data through AWARE so that we're able to identify gaps in their language proficiency as well. So we're able to better prepare our students. Once we identify the needs for our students, we're able to ensure that we have designed the proper support for that student to get a higher grade point average, so that they're better prepared to take the opportunities for high school. We also need to improve our efforts to accelerate their content mastery, and so we do that also by closing gaps and keeping an eye on what they're working on as early as elementary grades. Our current work, we kind of grouped it into the work of our curriculum, the area of instruction, and the area of assessment. So in curriculum, our district has hired an external company, and this is part of our 5-year strategic plan. And this company is conducting a curriculum audit for our district, and we will be having the findings of that later this summer. And that will also set the framework for the work that we need to continue developing in terms of our curriculum. For instruction, what we look at is I provide professional learning for our teachers and administrators in the area of content and pedagogy, just to ensure that our teachers are knowledgeable, especially in our area for Spanish instruction and what it is that our students have available to them in Spanish. And then, of course, the pedagogy of we do use sheltered instruction in our district, as well as our bilingual model for early exit. We do have several layers of intervention depending on the needs of the student. We have some in-class supports that are available. We have out-of-class supports, and also some of the supports that are computer-assisted. And then in terms of assessment, our state has now given us more local control over selecting the supports that we provide to our students during state assessments, and they also broadened the scope of what is allowable as a support to our students. So the one thing we did find that was missing in our district was that intentionality and alignment. We do have the interventions that I spoke of. However, we need more assistance in being truly intentional and aligning the needs of the students to the resources that we have available to them. And we feel that that is the bridge work that we're working on right now. We have started that work, and we look forward to continuing that for the following year. So our homework, or the work that we have to do, is that by reading the study, we feel good about the things that we are working on that are in line with the study. So it kind of gives us that peace of mind that we're headed on the right direction. But it also reminds us that we do need to have intentional scheduling on our part, so that currently my ESL strategists are working side by side with their counselors as they prepare for next year's data, next year's schedule for our ELs. They're looking at whether or not the student has made progress both academically and linguistically, and then they are intentionally placing them in courses that are truly required. And if they're not truly helpful and truly required for the student, then we're able to say this student does not need the additional support, so it frees up a period for them to be scheduled in something that has a higher rigor of academics. And also being intentional about the available resources that we have. So funding is always an issue, right? So one of the things that we look at carefully now is our material resources, our financial resources, as well as our human resources. And once we have identified them, since they do vary from campus to campus, then we look at the individual needs of students, and we are very intentional in aligning those resources to the true need of the student. And then, of course, one of the areas that we do need to continue to improve is our monitoring to ensure that students are progressing academically and linguistically at every grade level. So one of the things that we have in place now is we just purchased a system that will help us bring that monitoring, I think, more feasible to all easier access for all of our teachers and its campus administrators. So we look forward to that new system as we move on into the new school year. And then also developing strategies just to better understand the challenges that students face, so that this can better inform our decisions, because with limited resources, we want to ensure that we prioritize where we invest our best efforts, so that we can have the bigger bang for our buck, I guess, so to speak, with our students. And just being intentional. So that is what we're working on at this time. And the homework that we have, and I think that what this study really helped us also was to recognize that there are differences within the group of ELs. Typically, we look at our data in terms of ELs and non-ELs. And so this really helped us think more carefully about not just grouping them into two groups, but looking at that EL group as more heterogeneous. And so we're able to be more intentional about the levels of support that we provide our students. And that is the reflection that I have on this study.